We are live. Hello, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon or morning.
Morning for me. It's 8 o'clock here, Eastern Standard Australian. Mate, thanks for coming on. We're going to talk about a post you put on LinkedIn that I, and I'm sure many others, found very interesting. It resonated hard. Let's put it that way. So before we get started, you please just introduce yourself, what you do, where you're from.
I can do that. My name is Elisabeth Wallem, and I'm currently leading the project management part in tech in EY Norway. But I have a background of many years as a Microsoft partner, working with all the tools for project and portfolio management. And I have a passion for portfolio management. And that's why data quality is something that is important to me. So, and I wrote the post because that is definitely what I see every day.
Yeah. So it's the old adage: if you can't measure, you can't manage, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like just guesstimates. Otherwise, okay. So I might just highlight the post for everyone that's not seen it. And can I just suggest everyone hop on LinkedIn and follow Elisabeth? Well worth it. You get a lot of insights from her posts. And I can't highlight it here, but just in the very last section, it's all good, but the very last section is the part that sort of made my bones tingle a little bit, as that seeing the state of the data often makes the customer look at both process and training, making the organizational learn and mature and become ready for data-driven decision making. Okay, so that feeds into what I think is often missing in PMOs, which is a opportunity for people to reflect on where they're at, finding a process to improve what they're doing, and creating a positive feedback loop that makes their value, in my belief, makes their value significantly higher than would be if they were just button pushers and paper pushers as they try and get people to do checklists and push them through stage gates and just what I would call perfunctory doing, not thinking and doing, or thinking and acting. I'm a huge fan of the plan, do, check, act, the old Deming cycle. And I think a lot of organizations failed to put that into their everyday practice.
And on that one, I mean, plan, do, check, act. One of the reasons why data is very often quite bad in organizations is also because people are asked to put in all this data, but nobody actually looks at it. And if nobody actually looks at it, why on earth would I bother putting it in? And why would I worry if it's good quality or not? So it goes both ways. You don't get good data if you don't look at it and give feedback on how you want it. So that's also a big part of it.
I won't mention who, but I was asked by one organization back in the day with SharePoint. And as you often do, you set up a SharePoint list to record the weekly or monthly progress reports. And all the PMs ganged up on me and said, "We need a copy paste button, please." So they just wanted to carry on from the first one and just copy paste without actually giving meaningful updates, And to my shame, all the rags in that report were subjective. So we weren't even at a point where we were capturing the real data. It was just what the PM wanted to display to the world.
Yeah. I'm seeing another place where, for example, it wasn't clear enough what you were supposed to put in. So there was a field where you were putting in the cost of a risk. And you also have the possibility of putting in opportunity cost, or actually then opportunity revenue, or whatever you would call it.
Yeah.
And people didn't know which one was a minus and which one was a plus. So they used whatever they felt was right. And when you then looked at the totality of it, it was quite interesting and had nothing to do with reality, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So just narrowing in on your solution that you were talking about here, a quality report. So do you want to just go over basics of it? Obviously, if someone wants to buy it, they can contact you directly.
There's no one stop for all here. So basically, I mean, I work with many different project and portfolio management solutions, but I do use Power BI to get the data out, because that's a tool that I know and I feel I can get pretty much anything I want in any format. And then I look at whatever parts of project management the customer works with, whether that is the schedule, if it's risk, if it's cost, and just try to understand what the customer is trying to get. And then I try to, okay, so if you want to report on this, and if you want to make a decision based on this data, what would we want to measure to make sure that that data makes sense? How do we know? And,
so the obvious one would be a non-subjective RAG, right? Schedule. We're comparing baseline against forecast, and we know what percentage we're allowed for our tolerance, or days that are allowed for the tolerance, or weeks, or whatever the measure is. So it's key to get that criteria from the customer, and then check. So your quality check isn't necessarily to see whether that is actually happening. Your quality check might be something like, well, does a baseline exist in the first place?
Yeah, both. So does a baseline exist? Are they completing tasks that are in the future, for example? Is there a lot of tasks that are in the past that haven't been completed that should have been moved to now?
Yeah.
Is there a responsible person on each task? So all of those things you can put into a quality report to see, okay, so do we actually have what we need?
Yeah. So you're looking at things like, is the status of the schedule up to date? Like, if they might say that they're green because they're within tolerance, but if tasks haven't been updated for the last 3 months, then it's absolute nonsense, right? So that's a clear indicator. And then the other thing would be, like you said, real resources assigned to the task, other than, so one of the things is you probably use generic resources a lot, like most people in Microsoft project world. So, people just get lazy. They don't swap out for the real resource. Yeah. Some other things, I guess, risk registers have been updated recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have been updated for 6 months, for example.
Exactly. So apart from yourself, who do you think of the audience for these quality reports to be?
So basically what with all the customers I've worked with, the audience for the report is actually the top management that are making decisions across the project. So the ones that are prioritizing where to put their resources, where to put their money, because those are the ones that I'm scared of making decision based on something that they just get and just believing what's there.
Okay,
and,
so just in terms of scenario, I've sort of done this in 2 ways in the past. One is I put a confidence level on a normal status report, right? And I say confidence in this data being correct is poor, right? And then that always prompts the question, well, why did you say that? And then you say, well, they don't have a baseline, mate. How am I supposed to judge it? But then is your approach more that you say, okay, here's a list of like a naughty list of projects you can't believe at the moment,
Well, I definitely don't have a naughty list, and if I would, as we mentioned earlier between you and me, I would also maybe just hide who the naughty people were to get the point across, not the
Right.
culprit across. So that would be the main.
It comes down to that whole thing. Don't present a problem without a solution, right? So it's, but again, that's where I just come back to what I really liked about the post was the customer looks at the process and training. So that means you've got the naughty list. You're going to go talk to the naughty people and help them fix it.
Yeah.
And then represent the confidence level to the executive.
And that's also where it often goes wrong, because people see that the data quality is poor. They go in and then they update and fix the data quality that is there at that exact point in time. But that doesn't really help, because you just turn your back and then you look back again and it's just as bad, because people haven't learned.
No. I mean, it's fair to say that by helping them do it, you sort of alleviate the responsibility or the accountability for their poor reporting. Yeah. So I sort of see 2 points here is like, you don't want to be constantly fishing for the people. You want to teach them how to fish and then expect that they're going to catch their own fish.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But in this case, they just go, well, I don't like fish, so I'm not fishing. And again, all this resonates. So I guess the naughty list for me is recalcitrantry to a point where you just have to raise it. You just, we've been 3 months going through the same process, and these same 3 or these same 8 people or whatever it is refuse to participate. Yeah.
But sometimes it's actually the solution lies elsewhere, because sometimes organizations aren't mature enough and they decide on, for example, going for this extremely complex solution with loads and loads of data and loads of things that they need to fill in, and people don't know enough. And the management doesn't actually need that much information, because they are also not ready for that amount of data, that amount of stuff to consider. So very often it would be a lot better if they just decided to do something simple. So simple, and then get it complete and you get it right.
Yeah. So it's always good to look at a maturity roadmap and say, well, what's achievable in this space. So I like the PMBOK 10 knowledge management areas, or something similar, where you can say to the customer, like, here's scheduling, right? Now, if you get this type of scheduling happening, then you get this benefit that you can see. Yeah. But at this, like you said, at the same time, you have to make sure that they understand the difficulty of getting there in terms of new process and training. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say every time there's new training, there's change resistance, right? Every time these things come in. So you've got to look at the organization has to take a good hard look at itself and say, what is achievable? And then use that as part of the decision about how mature they can reach, at least in stage 1, right?
And so, I mean, for bigger organizations that have been working with project management for a long time and big projects, you get all these very experienced project managers that are sort of working almost as a single company outside of the organization and have done things in the same way forever. And the more tech savvy they are, the more difficult to get them into a sort of a governance, because they, instead of doing it the right way, they find clever solutions to work around the system and find out how they can do it in the way they've always done it, but with a new system.
I call it putting more effort into dodging than doing, right? So, and IT people are like that. They, being an ex-IT person, right? I will defend my ilk to a point. I remember way back when ITIL was first introduced into Australia. And it's a similar thing. Hey guys, we're going to do change management. We're going to do release management. And all of a sudden people were like gasping, saying nothing wrong with what we do now, et cetera, et cetera. So that change resistance, in my opinion, because most IT people are on a little bit of a spectrum curve of some description, they tend to get more affronted than the normal person about changing the process that they're currently comfortable with. So yeah, IT is its own particular challenge, I think. But I think there's a lot of change resistance. I'll put it this way. The number of times I've heard people say, that's not part of my job, when you're trying to put a new process in place around, delivery, whether it's a project or not, it's a lot. It's fair. And I think in a lot of instances, it might be a fair thing for a PM, and it's quite often the way they dodge is they say, I'm far too busy for this extra process you're putting on me. And if you put it on me, it's going to slow the project. All of a sudden, the risk registers fill up with, new processes, checking our delivery, blah, blah, blah. So they've got effective methods of pushback if they need to, because if a program manager hears that his projects are at risk, their job is to stop that risk in the organization. So again, it's all resonating very, very highly. So just in terms of change management and getting that workflow, that improvement process going, what do you think is the best approach?
As you said, it's often the project manager that is the highest resistance. And one of the things that a lot of people do is that they try to sort of look at, okay, so if you do this in a good way, it's good for the company as a whole because they can see the right things being done. But that doesn't normally help for a project manager who's sort of fighting from day to day. So you need to sort of find something, maybe not right there, but in the future that answers the questions, what's in it for me?
The win-win.
And if you can't find that, then you have to find something to bargain with. Sort of, okay, so if we do this in this way, maybe we can make something else easier for you. What about if we can automate the status reporting more? Would it then be okay to use a little bit more time on the process and discussions on, say, for example, the risk register, if that means that the monthly report, you just have to push a button, or not even push a button because they can go in and look.
It just automatically grabs the latest, latest data. That's good. I mean, it's always handy too, I think, if the push for the change isn't necessarily coming from the PMO, but I'll try and use the example where if the decision is to swap the to change forecasting tool from an Excel spreadsheet to a schedule, for instance, and they want it uniformly done, and they, which means that you're going to have to start standardizing schedules with, proper WBSs that match the financial system. You obviously have to start doing costed schedules with real resource costings, etc. So in my experience, it's always best to have that come from maybe the CFO as the driver. And
it has to come from there.
Very good point.
If it's not supported by management, it's never going to happen.
It's a case of have the right sponsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like any other project, and I think this is a problem for PMOs. Maybe generally they don't treat themselves as a project when they do change. So yeah, get the right sponsor.
But in this scenario, for example, when you go from Excel to a planning, as in schedule planning tool, I would say that the biggest hurdle and the one that everyone seems to forget is the training. So you can't expect people to just take a more complex tool, which has got inbuilt logic that they don't even know about, and just start using it. Because my experience, because I've done some 100 training courses on planning tools, and if you have a tool, you put in a schedule, you put on resources, and then all of a sudden things start changing and you don't know why, then I would also stop using that tool, because I want to have control of my own plan. So you need to have that training to be able to do it and to be able to do it well.
Well, I think that's why they start with spreadsheets, right? Because it avoids those auto calculations that they make one change with the new resource, and then things get changed automatically inside the engine, and they don't understand how or why what just happened. So training.
I have had the customers that ask me, so we have this plan with all these dependencies and stuff, and we want to can we just remove those dependencies, because I don't want my plan to move. And I'm like, yes, of course we can do that. But even if your schedule in the tool doesn't move, doesn't your project move? It doesn't really work that way.
No. I mean, there's some basics that, like you said, a gradual approach is useful. Obviously, the more complex outcome you want, the more moving parts need to change underneath. And obviously that increases the difficulty of process and people change as well. And the number of times that I've seen processes get officially released and then ignored has been far too many. It shouldn't happen that way. So
that's also because sometimes they just make them too complex, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's a good thing to have a PMO as well, because you need to have somebody that really knows it and can explain it to all the project managers, can explain this to the people that aren't that experienced. So you need to have that support system in place in a way.
Yes. Yeah. PMOs have difficulty proving their value to organizations in a lot of instances. And I think that's because they're not as proactive as they should be in terms of reaching their clients. In terms of even like simple at-shoulder help, that goes a long way to gain them allies in the field.
You need to get the trust.
And if not, then everyone just calls you an impediment and you die on wither. No one wants that. So
and if you get the trust, you can also help them with everything they do. So again, that will over time improve data quality.
Exactly. It's a hard win. It's a hard win, but I loved your post. I applaud you for that one, and I'm sure there's many more to come. It's great. All right, thanks, Elisabeth. Been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you want to promote while you're?
No, just basically portfolio management. It's needed. Everyone should do it. Everyone should prioritize, and having a PMO in a larger organization is absolutely worth it. So
100%. Preaching to the choir here. Absolutely.
I know.
All right. Thanks, mate. Take care.
Thank you so much.